Hello, welcome to this edition of the umgoblue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
and we're going to break down Michigan's last two games. First game versus Michigan State, next game versus Purdue, as Michigan finishes the bye week at the three-quarter mark of the season. Well, Clint, what did you think about that Michigan State game?
Well, you won a rivalry game on the road, so there's no, there's no shame in any of that ever, for sure. It's always going to be a little bit closer than what you would think. And Michigan State scored a touchdown late on their final drive to really make it closer than what I expected. I think that game went pretty much exactly as you and I discussed leading into the game, and the score would have been almost exactly as I predicted, minus that final garbage time score by Michigan State. So overall, I was pretty satisfied with what we saw. There were a couple mistakes that still, were kind of blinking red lights, as we like to say on the dashboard. But Michigan 4 trips into scoring opportunities and scored 3 touchdowns and kicked a field goal, and that's 6 points per trip inside the opponent's 40, and you'll take that. You'll take 6.0, and that that metric changes as we get into the next game. But in terms of what they were able to do against Michigan State, I thought they held serve. It was not the cleanest performance, but a win on the road, and take that and get the heck out of East Lansing.
Absolutely. And, I like what Sharon had to say about the game.
Can I add just how proud I am of our players, not respond to a lot of that? Because it could have been easy. 12 is a lot. It could have been easy for them to do that, and that was an emphasis all week of want to play clean football, want to play disciplined football, want to strain for 60 minutes within the whistles, and felt I'm really proud of our team for doing that. Because there was a lot of times that they couldn't, and they could have, but retaliated. But to be disciplined like that speaks a lot of these young men, and their thought process and what we talk about, team over me.
Clint, it's interesting because I always love beating Michigan State. I'll never get tired of it, right? It is the in-state rivalry. It is the state championship, as the players like to say. And Rashawn Benny reminded his teammates of what it's like to lose to Michigan State and how they don't want to ever do it again.
When my freshman year, when we lost, that was like the worst year ever, because that's all I had to hear for the whole year. No matter what we did, making it to the CFP, still heard that. So it's very important for us to get that win every year. Well, going into the week, we all knew the task ahead. We knew who we was playing. We knew the history with everything that went down with them. So just ultimately us being on board with everybody, trying to keep everybody under control. So, just talking to player, if we see somebody, getting out they cool, just go get them, just grab them, bring them back to our side. So that was really the biggest thing, knowing that, this game can get kind of heated. So just trying to keep each other together.
Okay, still on that left side, John?
Just follow up on that. Coach praised the discipline of the whole team. Did you have any moments personally where you kind of had to rein it in?
Yeah, I did. I did. You want me to talk about what happened or something?
Yeah.
Oh, my fingers had just got stepped on, purposely, but it's all good.
Like stomped or just stepped down?
Stepped on, stood over.
I got to say that, of course, in this game, Michigan came out, scored 10 points in the first quarter, and that stadium was ready to empty, okay? If Michigan had been able to score another touchdown before the Spartans answered with a touchdown in the second quarter, so you go into halftime 10-7, and it didn't have that feel. Okay, it had the feel that Michigan was kind of letting Michigan State hang around, and in past years that could have been fatal. But Michigan comes out, scores 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, scores another touchdown in the fourth quarter, and as you said, Michigan State scored a garbage touchdown at the end, final 31-20. But I guess I am sounding the alarm on the rivalry. Okay. You went there, and like I said, there are times you would go there and you were waiting for Michigan State to come back, and you just had the feeling that, there wasn't an electricity in the air like there usually is. It didn't have the feel of, well, anything can happen in a rivalry game. It really had the feel that this game was almost over before it began. And as much as I love beating Michigan State like a rented mule, it really, again, it just had a weird feel. And I've spoken many times over the years how my least favorite road trip is going to East Lansing because of the bitterness of the rivalry and some of the treatment you get. Right. This was easy peasy. And again, it just had a sense that they were beating not only the team, but the fan base before the game even started. And, by the end of the game, there were not many people, not many Spartan fans left in the stadium to see that garbage touchdown. And, the stadium had been taken over. And again, on one hand, it's great to see, but you really get the sense that Michigan State is reeling on and off the field as a football program right now.
Yeah, I don't know that they've got a core identity that they can build on. I thought that they did. I really thought that Aiden Childs was very similar to what we've seen recently from Maryland, especially when they had Tunga Vailoa. But Aiden Childs has taken a major step back this year compared to last year. He was kind of a wild card last year. He would make a lot of big plays, but would also, make some crazy, wild gunslinger throws and turn the ball over and was a little bit reckless. So you kind of expected him to mature and clean some of that stuff up. And it seems like more that he's just lost the explosiveness. He still makes a couple bad decisions per game, but has kind of lost the explosiveness. So, they don't have the identity that I thought that they did over the last 2 years. And from a rivalry standpoint, it's great to, I'm glad. I don't really want to be anxious as we were certainly in the D'Antonio era every single year against that team. But, there is a certain kind of loss when the rivalry just doesn't have the same kind of electricity, like you said, and it does not, and this game, Michigan won in a pretty boring fashion, and it kind of covered up, like those blinking lights that we talked about. Bryce Underwood goes 8 for 17 for 86 yards passing, a QBR of 38.1. And that is, kind of nerve wracking. And he's still 13 points better on QBR than Aiden Childs, who went 14 for 28 with 130 yards. So I'm glad that our program is where it is right now, kind of bouncing back out of the wilderness from the 2024 season. And Bryce Underwood is certainly a centerpiece, a lot of young pieces on offense and a lot of experience on defense at all three levels. Recruiting is a big gap between the two programs. So I don't see it turning around under Jonathan Smith. They're going to have to try to find something that is a lightning strike or some kind of spark to that program. But when they find it, it will ignite quickly, because we know that there's a lot of hatred that program. And when they find it, they'll come on strong and they will be a threat to Michigan immediately.
Absolutely. And Jimmy Rolder said all the right things after the game.
It's always huge, this state rivalry. And, it's just everyone was so excited, and you could just feel the energy the whole game. Then in the locker room was just, everyone's just happy for each other, especially for Coach Moore. Awesome win.
Why specifically for Coach Moore?
Head coach, awesome. Always want to play for him, always want to play hard for him. And, went out there, and I'm really glad that we were able to do that. When you're Michigan, you're trained, like, to keep your composure in any circumstances, especially during this game. It gets chippy out there, and, just having each other's back when you see a guy maybe getting into a little bit, pulling him off, talking him down, and, everyone just playing for each other. And no one wanted to make those silly mistakes. We want to let them make those mistakes, play our football, play our brand.
Hey, I'm glad where we are, but there's also a certain kind of glory in beating a great opponent. And you really have to look at Michigan State. They have, like you said, I don't see it turning around under this coach. But in speaking to people around the program, and this isn't anything that's a secret. They have so many things hanging over them right now. They have the lawsuit with the last coach. They have a lawsuit with some of the people he was involved in, right? Not to get into some of the tawdry things he was involved in, but there are all these potentially explosive and expensive liabilities hanging over the program. And there's definitely money among the Michigan State alumni and booster base, but there's a sense of, hey, we need to pause because we don't know how much all this stuff is going to cost. And then there's also turmoil in the leadership of the university. So you have all these gears that just aren't meshing, that, have some big rocks caught in them. And again, I love to beat Michigan State. Michigan State is one of my favorite teams to beat. Throughout my whole life, I will never let that go. People say that Michigan State is like the little brother. I say, no, it's like the alcoholic brother-in-law that is a felon that you dislike. That's how I feel about Michigan State, right? I like my little brothers, Clint. I don't like Michigan State. But it felt like it definitely felt like a hollow victory. And we went in the wilderness, during the Rich Rod era and the Brady Hoke era. So what that feels like, and you can look across at the Michigan State fans and even the alums who, you interact with while you're covering the game and the media. And it's just they're hanging their head, right? So obviously we will take the win, but walking out of the stadium, my sense was that Michigan did not play well against a poor team. It wasn't a great game, right? And it's for a game that you're, a night game, you have a national TV audience. I don't think really either team showed out very well. And it's unfortunate that Michigan couldn't put them away in the first half, because they definitely had the potential, but because things weren't sinking, and again, you talk about, Bryce Underwood, again, 8 for 17. That's nothing to write home about. Okay. You're not going to get excited about that. While the total offense had, 362 yards, the passing attack is just not there yet. Okay. And, we're going to talk about that as we talk about where we are at the 3-quarter mark of the season. I've kept hoping that the offense was going to show that it could truly play complementary football. And in this game, thank goodness the running attack, picked up the slack, because they definitely need it, right? I mean, to basically manage 86-yard passing against a really beaten and defeated Michigan State team kind of shows that this was not a storybook epic struggle for the Paul Bunyan Trophy.
Oh, absolutely not. They did not play their best game, but again, coming off the Washington game, kind of going back into that mindset, we saw a great execution. We knew that there were differences in that team, home and road. You and I were nervous that it was going to be, another shocking disappointment. Our pregame podcast was more about trepidation from 2020 and 2015 and other nightmares. And we came out of that being kind of bored with a victory that didn't look as pretty as we wanted. So at that point, I think we were fine. We checked the box and we moved on. And then we got to the night game at home against Purdue.
And before leaving the Michigan State game, you have Justice Haynes with 152 yards and Jordan Marshall with 110, and just again just a rolling running attack. And we got to give credit to the offensive line. Again, Michigan just ground them up. All right, so Michigan completes the sweep of their rival, winning 31-20, successfully bringing Paul Bunyan home. One of the most interesting trophies, but I'm sure glad it's here. So that's where we were on that. And Michigan rolled into the next game, another night game versus Purdue. And, this game, I think, says a lot about where the Big Ten is right now, and it says a lot about where Michigan is right now. Michigan wins 21-16. Purdue is 0-6 in the conference. Michigan ends up 5-1 in the conference after this game. And this game was just a slugfest. What did you think about watching this game, Clint?
Well, when you and I talked offline heading into Purdue, I was a little bit nervous that the defense was going to have trouble with the Boilermakers. Their offensive coordinator came out of Lincoln Riley's coaching tree at USC. We saw the problems that the defense had schematically, structurally, and calling plays with Wink Martindale against USC. So I just thought that there was a blueprint out there that the Boilermakers could pick up and reasonably duplicate, so that they were going to give us some trouble when Michigan's defense was on the field. And that's what we saw for sure. They moved the ball up and down the field. And when we were in the press box, I said, Purdue has done this in a lot of games. They've moved the ball into scoring position, especially early. But usually this is about where they shoot themselves in the foot. And immediately there was a strip sack, and we got the first turnover, and Michigan scored eventually to take the lead. So, that was kind of the story of the season for Purdue under their new coach. But they're not the Purdue of the last couple of years. I think that Purdue would beat Michigan State. I don't think that they play each other directly this year, but I think that Purdue is a better team than Michigan State at the moment, and that Purdue would win if they played. But regardless, the bigger, scarier thing for me was another bad performance by the offense. Bryce Underwood specifically looked a little jittery with the fundamentals in his footwork, especially in the pocket. And that impacted some of his throws, and he had another tough statistical day. And then, even worse than what we've seen the rest of the year from Bryce, he turned the ball over. Not only did he turn it over twice, both times in scoring position, all the way down in the red zone. One time on an interception, ill-advised throw with a different receiver that was open in the end zone at the time. McCulley was really, really open for a touchdown in the end zone, even though Bryce forced it into the tight end and got picked. And then trying to get some extra yardage on a quarterback run, he fumbled the ball and into the end zone for a touchback, where if that it's a little bit unlucky. Had it gone out of bounds before the end zone, Michigan keeps the ball and it goes back to the spot of the fumble. But if you fumble it into the end zone and then it goes out, then it's a turnover. So regardless, the ball security problems, repeatedly kind of taking his eyes down to the pass rush instead of keeping him, reading the defense, reading the coverage, looking for his progressions on his receivers, just was not fundamentally sound from Bryce Underwood, and that was the first time that we had seen that at home, and that was more disconcerting. Again, I expected the defense to show signs of struggle, but I did not expect the offense to struggle at home against a mediocre or bad, really, Purdue defense, and that was scary.
Yeah, and when we look back at this one, Michigan scored a touchdown in the first quarter. Purdue and Michigan traded touchdowns in the second quarter, and it's 14-7, right? And Michigan has shown this where I say dork around a little bit, right? And we're used to them kind of exploding and coming back in the second half, right? Or at least kind of, playing more complementary football. In this game, Purdue scored a field goal in the third quarter. So it's 14-10, which is, too close for comfort. And then Purdue scored 6 points in the fourth quarter, and Michigan scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter for a 21-16, way too close win. And, we headed into the bye week, and between the Michigan State game and this game, it dawned on me that this is what we're going to see, okay? And, last year we had an offense that was struggling because ostensibly it didn't have a great, talent at the quarterback position, right? Well, this year we have Bryce at quarterback. And like you said, this was a home game. This is well into the season. We don't expect to see the quarterback having happy feet or making those kind of mistakes. And this was the kind of game where, and I was thinking about this. It reminded me of, the Lloyd Carr era where Michigan would play really close games and win most of them. But every now and then there'd be a lightning strike and you'd lose because the score was so close, right? And that's the feeling I had in the second half of this game. And I'm not saying this is how the team's going to be forever. I'm not saying that this is Sharon Moore's plan, but what I've settled in is this season, this is where the team's at, right? And you have an amazing running attack, okay? You lose Justice Haynes and you plug in Jordan Marshall, and if you got both of them, man, you just run over everybody.
Jordan's, he would go to 95% of schools in the country and be the starter, if not all of them. So he's an outstanding running back. He has the ability to make you miss. He has the ability to run you over. He has the ability to, take the big one to the house. So he's done everything he can to this point to get carries, and he'll continue to do that.
What I really hoped, and I said this is me recognizing and appreciating the team we have versus the team I want, okay? The team I want is a team that can go vertical a couple times a game. The team I want is the running attack opening up the passing game. And what I've come to terms with as we hit the 3-quarter mark of the season, our big Q3 is done, heading in the fourth quarter, is that I'm just not expecting the passing game to click. Okay, as much as I've been hoping and praying, what I saw versus Purdue showed me that Bryce is extremely talented. He has pieces around him. The offensive line is starting to gel, but it's just not there yet. And I think there's some reasons for that we can get into.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the most important thing is that the offensive line has taken a step forward. And there's been some injuries, right? They've been dinged up. Guys on the interior have stepped up. Blake Frazier at left tackle has stepped up. There's news coming out that Evan Link's injury may not have been season ending. So there's added depth there on the left side. That is the most important thing. If we circle all the way back to August, that was our biggest question mark about this offense. freshman quarterback was kind of a given. That's a challenge. That's a struggle. But if you can protect him and if you can run the ball, then the quarterback's going to be okay. So the question was really about whether the offensive line would come together, and they are. They are coming together. The running game was dynamic and explosive with Justice Haynes, even in games where the offense was out of sync against Oklahoma, on the road against USC. They still had the ability to hit an 80-yard home run and put a touchdown up and stay in the game. And then after Justice Haynes has gone down with this injury, Jordan Marshall, a different style, certainly, more physical and grinding it out in between the tackles instead of, being a little bit more elusive. But he's shown that he can, if he gets into the secondary, he can take it to the house too. So the offense has the fundamentals and the foundation to be really good. The biggest question now is, did they shore up the confidence in the pocket and the fundamentals and the footwork with Bryce Underwood in the pocket and develop some rhythm, some type of timing in the passing game with the receivers? I can understand that you've written that off, certainly with what we've seen through 9 games. But if there is any opportunity to kind of instill some of that rhythm and timing, the bye week, the second bye week now in this new college football landscape, the second bye week is really the time to do that. Guys need to get healthy. Hopefully they were a little bit less physical as guys are kind of nursing some injuries and some bumps and bruises. But footwork and timing and feel and rhythm in the passing game, 7-on-7 kind of stuff is perfectly acceptable to be working on this late season bye week time. So I expect to see a better Bryce Underwood. Certainly better than we saw against Purdue. That was a bad game. He's a freshman quarterback. He's going to have bad games. It's frustrating that it's late in the season, but who's hitting the panic button on Bryce Underwood? What we've gotten this year is tremendous out of Bryce Underwood as a freshman starter. So I caution you a little bit on writing off the passing game completely. Lowered expectations makes sense for what the passing offense can be, what we expect to see. But if we are going to see some evolution, some development, a little bit more confidence in the pocket and taking the time to make some reads and throw the ball down the field, then this would be the time to see it coming out of the bye week. So I think it's okay to be hopeful for that. I would be encouraged if we saw them taking those shots, even if they miss. You and I have talked about that before. There's value in taking that shot down the field, even if it's an incomplete pass, because you force the defense to defend the entire field vertically and horizontally. So it'll be a good sign, a green light on the dashboard, so to speak, if we see Michigan calling plays that pushes the ball vertically, even if they are missing against Northwestern, who's a pretty good defense. I think SP Plus has Northwestern 36th or so. So I would like to see that. I don't necessarily need to see them be perfect to feel encouraged, but I do need to see Bryce standing with some confidence in the pocket and delivering the ball with some confidence down the field and not the happy feet that we saw against Purdue.
I don't want to say I'm writing it off, Clint. I just I have realistic expectations. Okay. And, I mentioned, what did I think would happen? When we were in the preseason and we had Donovan McCulley, who is a specimen, okay, just a huge guy, just incredibly talented, right? High expectations. You had Samaj Morgan, who had shown flashes, during his career, and you had a talented array of tight ends, okay? And I really thought that what we were going to see happen during the year was You are going to see a tag team of people doing what Colston Loveland did last season. Okay. Those little dump offs, those little safety passes. And we were going to see that, right? And those little dump offs, those little safety passes allow the quarterback to get a rhythm, kind of suck up the defense, and then that opens up the vertical game, right? So what we saw this season was early on, we saw the offensive line get kind of dinged up. Okay. That has resolved itself. We see Marlon Klein coming back from injury, but because of the mash unit that the tight ends have been, you really didn't see Bryce have an opportunity to get that kind of rhythm. Okay. So I think that was hugely impactful on where he is right now. And honestly, Andrew Marcia stepped up. Okay. We had Fred Moore leave the program. Okay. He was another guy who'd shown flashes. And, you had Channing Goodwin, show a flash here and there. But I don't know who I would put money on for a long pass right now. I completely agree with you. We've talked about this in the past. I think there's an incredible need or utility to, when I was a kid, we used to have a tabletop football game, and one of the plays we would run, like if you just wanted to throw it downfield, was called a 54 wide go, right? And all three receivers just went deep, to different areas of the end zone, right? I think, every time I see Michigan line up during their first drives this season, I tell myself, I just want to see a 54 wide go scripted. I want to see Bryce show the opposing defense that he can throw it all the way to the other goalpost, and maybe one of our guys can run underneath it. Okay. Basically keep him honest. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that. I hope we see that. Okay. Samaj is MIA. Okay. He's MIA in the punt receive. And that's one of the reasons, Sharon likes to talk about complementary football. Michigan is not playing complementary football right now. Special teams is not consistent. It's not getting it done. The running game is getting it done. The passing game is not getting it done. So where I'm concerned is we're heading on the road for 2 games. Okay. Heading to Northwestern, going to be a sideshow, right? Playing in Wrigley, great. Okay. Playing on a natural surface, which Michigan does not do often. Okay. So great. We're going to have that. Then you got Maryland, right? So you have 2 road games in a row. And then of course the big one coming up. So I'm hoping we can see a flash. Okay. But if I'm these 3 opponents and I'm scheming against Michigan, I am loading up the box and hoping that I can slow our running attack and saying, beat me with the pass. And that's exactly what they did last year. Okay. Exactly. Now the difference this year is that you need to account for Bryce Underwood running. Okay. And yes, he had that mistimed fumble, near the end zone versus Purdue, but I think he's going to learn from that. And, those are the kind of things as a young player, you gotta learn to secure the ball. I like a lot of what he tried to do. Okay. He threw some nice passes against Purdue. He threw some nice passes against Michigan State. He's got the rifle, right? I'm just not sure that Michigan has the receivers other than Andrew Marsh. Andrew Marsh is about the only deep threat that I'd be concerned about, and I would scheme against him if I was a DC right now. He's the only guy I'm worried about. Beat me with somebody else, rock on, right? But I will not get beat by Andrew Marsh. And I think I would love to see me proven wrong. I'm not writing him off. I just think that I have realistic expectations. And as good as Bryce is, I wanted more. And I'm not saying from him, I'm saying that I think that the receiver core has let him down in some ways.
I certainly, especially early in the season, while Andrew Marsh, again, another true freshman, is kind of acclimating to the college game, and when we saw Marsh emerge into kind of solid number two with McCulley, or 1A, 1B, however you want to look at it, was after the first bye week. Again, these bye weeks are critical for huge developmental jumps for the youngest players, of which, Underwood, of course, is one, and Marsh is one. And, watch out for Browder, another true freshman receiver that we're seeing get some reps here. So I think that there are more weapons emerging in the receiver room. I think Zach Marshall, the tight end, is emerging as certainly not only a capable blocker in the run game, but also certainly capable catching the ball and getting yards after the catch across the middle. The shortcoming right now of the passing game still is trust and rhythm between Bryce Underwood and Chip Lindsey. Bryce has to show that he can stand in there and make the reads and stay solid in his fundamentals in the pocket, so that Chip can call the more complicated pass plays, right? There's kind of a chicken and the egg dynamic there. It's not either or, it's got to be both. The coordinator's got to trust the quarterback, and the quarterback's got to he's got to, reward that trust, and vice versa. So that's why I think it's on Bryce to stand tall and throw with confidence, even if he misses, even if he makes bad decisions. He can't bail, right? He can't let the fundamentals break down as quickly as he has recently. And then what that does functionally for the passing game is it will allow Bryce to attack the middle of the field, right? We're talking about stretching vertically with Marsh and McCulley, or maybe Browder, anybody else, right? But it's those secondary guys coming underneath, right? Like, send McCulley deep, take the safety with them, and then J.J. McCarthy was so good at hitting those dig routes across the middle, right? Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson, those guys on those dig routes across the middle, that was the core of the passing offense under J.J. McCarthy, and when Michigan was at its best in 23 and in 22. And Bryce is just as capable of doing that physically. He's just got to be able to do it mentally and with his confidence in the pocket. He's got to let those deep routes clear, and then let those guys get underneath, right? And find those spaces. So it's a tougher thing, but he's only going to learn by doing it, and he's not going to learn it. He can't learn it in the first 9 games. That's in the past, right? It's got to be now, and get out there, make some mistakes against Northwestern and against Maryland, where you have a talent advantage and can clean it up. Because if Michigan wants to play championship level football, they need Bryce Underwood to take his game up another level here over the last 3 games.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I will say about Bryce is that he's supremely confident. Okay. Whatever mistakes we see, he bounces right back. And, he did some pretty good celebrating against Michigan State, and Sharon talked about it, right?
No, so when I stepped in the end zone, I was wondering what I was going to do. I was looking around like, you know what, I don't do it. I was thinking about a backflip.
No backflips. No backflips.
So yeah, but I did at the end of the game.
Yeah, I saw you and Jordan. I saw all of that.
And he's getting the swagger, okay? No matter how much he struggled, he still is the man, right? And I think that is one of the things that gives me confidence and hope that he is continuing to evolve as a player, right? He never hangs his head, okay? He had those mistakes against Purdue, bounced right back. He has the belief and the confidence of the team, and we know he's going to get there. I'm not saying they won't get there. I don't know when in the next 3 games we're going to see it. Okay. And I have this feeling, okay, that Michigan is going to finish this stretch, and whatever happens after, we may see it then. Okay. Whether it's in the college football playoffs or whether it's in whatever bowl they go to, I feel like we're just maybe 4 games away and we're in game 1, 2, 3, if that makes sense. And, it's a process, Clint. He's a freshman. And, one of the phrases is, I like is, it takes 9 months to have a baby, not 9 women 1 month, right? And with quarterbacks, it takes time, okay? As much as he accelerated his development by getting extra steps in the spring, that's still spring, okay? And he went through the fire versus Oklahoma. He went through the fire versus USC. And it's going to click, okay? He has too much talent for it not to. It's just that I'm wondering if part of the clicking is he's not having that synchronicity with and that rhythm with a consistent wide receiver. And listen, I think Andrew Marsh is a star and he's going to be a bigger star. It's just that he's a freshman too, right? So it's frustrating for me because I look at the scoreboard and I think, gosh, this reminds me of the last stretch of last season. Okay. And yet Bryce is so much better. And there are things that are coming together that I think we struggled with. So it's frustrating. And I'll tell you, it absolutely drives me up a wall to see our special teams. Okay. And when Harbaugh was here, his kid took a ton of grief, right? Jay always took grief for being a Harbaugh, and, he owned it. He understood his privilege, working for his dad, but special teams were really good under him. Okay. And people would make cracks. Oh, it's just Jay. Hey, Jay took care of special teams, right? And when you have good special teams, you take them for granted. And we don't have good special teams right now. Okay. We didn't last year. And, Dominic Zavada made up for it because he had such a awesome streak hitting field goals last year. Well, he's not as consistent this year. Our return game is just a disaster. Okay. And I love Samaj as a player. The team is rallying around him. Okay. Definitely. The guys have his back. They say great things about him. Jordan Marshall had this to say about him.
Samaj is a great player. And, I'm going to say it again. I trusted him with all I have. I trusted in every single guy on the offense. I've seen them make plays in practice. I've seen them catch balls. It's nothing. I think it's just in his head, and he's going to be fine. Maj is a great player, and these coaches are going to put him in a great spot to keep making plays. And, again, everybody trusts him on this team. There's no trust lost because he dropped a ball or this. He's gonna have to make a big play for us at some point this year. Everybody on our rosters, Jamar Browder is another guy, Kuz, Jasper, all these guys are gonna have to make big plays. You saw it 2 weeks ago. Zach Marshall made big plays. You come to Michigan to play. At the end of the day, that's what you came to do. And again, I count every single guy on this team is gonna be. Their number's going to be called, and they're going to have to make a play. And like I said, no trust is lost for Samaj. Like, he's a great player, great person. He's worked his tail off all year, and he's going to make a big play for us in one of these upcoming games that is going to set the tone. And, again, everybody's going to be like, oh, we love Samaj and this and this. So, again, Samaj is a great player, and I'm excited to see how he takes the things that have been thrown at him and takes him out on the field and just plays.
Do you think he's seen things that have been thrown at him?
I have, everybody has, and you either can take it as motivation or you can hang your head on it. And these people, comments, things like that, you can't really get drawn into that. You gotta be yourself. Be you at the end of the day. Rely on what you've done, your training, And we've all seen it. Samaj can make plays. He made plays last year. He made plays this year. He's made plays freshman year. He's a great player.
You have this where, listen, I love Samaj. I've seen him be really good. He's been really bad this year. And I really feel, and I mean this genuinely, that they might need to swap him out for a game for his own good. Okay. Watch from the sidelines for a little bit. He really seems like it's so much in his head right now because it's not a physical thing. He's a talented guy. We've seen him do it. Okay. But to keep sending him out there almost seems cruel at this point. And they talk about it, Sharon assures us that, he continues to play at a very high level in practice. And it reminds me exactly of earlier in the season when Sharon said, yeah, the guys are catching the ball. And he literally talked about in a press conference about, talking about teaching wide receivers how to catch a ball, right?
It's all where your eyes are when you catch the football. Seeing the ball all the way to the tuck versus having your eyes look, trying to make a move before you catch the football. That's mainly where all the drops came from. And so continue to work on that. These kids have done a really good job. They did a really good job in the bye week, and it'll just continue to be a focus as we go through the week. And you watch college football, all the drops are usually that. It's not something special. There's no magic potion for it. And the worst coaching point you can tell a kid is catch the ball. Yeah, he knows he's supposed to catch the ball. Catch the ball. It irks me when I hear that. You got to catch the ball. Well, duh. You think he wants to drop the ball? No, he doesn't. So you got to tell him how to catch it. And there's different ways to do that. Whether that's above your chest, thumb to thumb, below your navel, pinky to pinky, see the ball all the way to the tuck. So all those things are pieces of it that you have to coach and teach. And
we should be talking about that at this level. And so those are my concerns. We talk about the flashing red lights. Special teams are a solid red light. It's not flashing. Okay. The passing game is flashing, and I feel better, that now that we have, Marlon Klein coming back and the way Zach Marshall has emerged, I think we're going to see the tight end position become great weapons for Bryce over these next 3 games. And hopefully that will open up the passing attack downfield. Cause I want to see, Bryce takes a lot of grief for the way he just guns it in short and intermediate routes. Man, I want to see him air it out and throw a 70 or 80 yard touchdown. That's what I want to see, but I don't know who would catch it at this point. So.
Yeah, I'll say this: 3/4 of the way through the season, and my preseason predictions right now are 9-0. It's gone pretty much how I expected. Of course, game to game varies. But I think that they're performing about at the level that I expected. The defense is not as dominant as I would have predicted, but they are capable. Now, right now, they are so dinged up that they are going to have to rely on some of that depth, and we're going to be grateful about things that we complained about earlier in the season with younger guys rotating in and taking so many snaps away from the older guys. You're going to need that experience now because you need those guys in their depth. Jimmy Rolder's questionable going forward. I think Barham is questionable going forward. Probably going to come back, and it looks like Cole Sullivan's even probably more like doubtful at the linebacker position. And that means you cannot afford, certainly you cannot afford Ernest Hausman to get dinged up in any serious way. In the secondary, Rod Moore has not been able to be out there as much as I would have hoped. I wish that the defense was dominant and these problems on offense would be small by comparison. And we still see some of the same problems that we saw last year on defense, most notably big explosive plays given up on third downs. And if Michigan can eliminate those more so in the last quarter of the season, and if the defense can be dominant like we saw in the fourth quarter of last season, if they can turn that corner, Wink can figure out how to create pressure with the front four, and mix up how he pressures quarterbacks and not just dial up 6-man blitzes, spamming all of the exotic blitzes over and over again, then that'll be the way to go in these next 3 games, I think. If they get back to being led by the defense, leaning on the run game, mixing in enough play action pass and maybe RPO and quarterback run to kind of keep the defense guessing, make the defenses defend the whole field, then Michigan can still be the team that we talked about in the preseason, even if it took longer to come together. And if this team, as I thought in the preseason, if this team is 9-2 coming home to play Ohio State in the last game of the season, then they will be in the conversation to be in the playoff. And that is what the expectation was for this team. So plenty of blinking red lights. There are some that are not blinking. I agree, of course, 100% on special teams. Everybody's heard me say it 10,000 times, so I won't beat the dead horse. But with all of those issues and a lot of youth and relying on some of your depth at key positions, for this team to be 7-2, going into the final quarter of the season with an opportunity to play championship football and bounce back from a down year last year, then they have a chance to really define what successful is and to meet that goal and to kind of get back to the championship standard that we hope for. So I'm excited to see that. I am nervous, a little bit anxious that we're going to see some mistakes. There's going to be some teeth grinding, but just win in advance at this point. It's all a playoff game now, because if they lose a third game, then the conversation shifts to off season and bowl prep and extra practices for young guys and all that stuff. And that's where we were at this point last year.
Well, Clint, and I think that is a point that I want to make. Okay. At this point last year, all those goals were off the table. Okay. And we hope they could pull out a win against Indiana. We hope they could pull out a win against Illinois. And they didn't, right? And then they bounced back against Northwestern, which was really frustrating because we saw how good they could be. And they followed that up with, of course, doing our annual beatdown of Ohio State. This year, and they say this to a man, all their goals are ahead of them, right? Everything is still on the table. So if you take care of business against Northwestern and you take care of business versus Maryland and you have your annual surge versus Ohio State, you're talking about, amazing success for this team. And I think for me, what's frustrating is, as you said, all your predictions came through. I thought this team would have one loss right now. Okay. And I feel as if this team, if everything clicks, you could really have an historic year this year, right? And that's why I said, hey, I see everything clicking 4 games from now. I hope that's in the college football playoffs, right? And you can see, and we talk about the bye week. What I'm really hoping is that in this bye week, you have Michigan getting healthier across the board, and you see the extra practices, coming in. You see the synchronicity with the passing game. And I'll tell you, if I'm Ohio State, not only am I concerned because I'm always concerned if I'm Ohio State, when I play Michigan, but you really haven't seen Michigan's passing attack click, so you don't know how to defend it, You don't know where it's going to come from right now. So I am very hopeful. It's interesting to me because, one of the things that Troy Bowles said.
It's been great. I feel like our best football is ahead of us, and we know that. So as the weeks go on, I feel like we're playing a lot better.
You talk to this team and you talk to the players, okay? And I will say one of the things that's been really great to see is you had Justice Haynes and you had Jordan Marshall, okay? And Jordan Marshall kind of took a back seat while Justice Haynes was gearing up the Heisman campaign for a couple games there, right? And Jordan Marshall comes back and says,
at the end of the day, I just have to be myself when I'm out there and do what I've always done, and that's just play hard and let the game come to me. And again, God's got me, and He's going to put me in the situation to play my best and go out there and do whatever I need to do to win, whether that's running through somebody or juking somebody.
And this is, I'll do whatever it takes to win. I love this team, right? And his attitude was good. He stepped up when Justice went down, and they back each other up. You can see this team having the camaraderie and the belief that they're going to get better, okay? That they see what's happening. They see the struggles with the passing game. And, you have a thing where you hear how they talk. You hear how they support each other, right? You hear, for example, how Jordan Marshall supports Samaj, right? And you hear what the coaches are saying. And I want to believe, right? I want to believe. I mean, Clint, we are not football savants, okay? What we're seeing, of course, the coaches see, and they're working on it. So the question that I have is when, okay? When will they peak? And I think that they have these 2 games coming up on the road. And then, of course, you have the game, which the players are already being asked about. So the thing that also has struck me as I've, had these 2 weeks between Michigan games with the bye is that the Big Ten Conference is either better top to bottom than I think people give credit for, or the teams at the top aren't nearly as good as we think, right? But Indiana eked out that win versus Penn State. But then the teams they've played have only won like 4 or 5 games. So how good is Indiana, right? I think they're really good, but we won't really know until, they face a more talented team in the Big Ten championship, right? Ohio State is always Ohio State, right? They're always good until they play Michigan. So when I look at Michigan struggling versus Purdue, and I look at, other teams struggling, I'm like, this is a conference that any team can beat you on any given day. So you got to watch it, right? And I hope that means that the whole conference is good, okay? And that, that the Big Ten is surging across the board. And that's why we're seeing some of these, lower tier teams playing tough games. And again, lots of people predicted a great season for Illinois. They have, have fallen a few times. So the question I have for you, Clint, is you do seasonal analysis looking at Michigan. What team does this Michigan team stack up with recently? What would you compare it to?
So I think this team is maybe one step ahead of the 2019 Michigan team and one step behind the 2021 Michigan team. So we're somewhere in transition there. And with, as we've said, 3 games to kind of prove and kind of shift that one direction or the other for sure. So I believe the defense, I was hoping that this defense could be as good as 2022, which I would call the Mike Morris defense. I don't think they've been quite that good, but statistically, and the numbers that I track, they're in that ballpark. I think that they're their penchant for giving up some big plays. I think of that 3rd and 26 against USC right off the top of my head. I don't remember those happening in 2022, right? So I think they're just not quite as good on defense as I would have expected. Offensively, for me, the benchmark has always been the 2021 team, and that's because that was J.J. McCarthy's freshman year. But remember, J.J. McCarthy was not the starter. Cade McNamara was the starter. I never wanted to compare the styles of Cade McNamara and Bryce Underwood. I don't know if you could find 2 more different quarterbacks at all. It is looking all the way across all of football. I don't think you could find 2 more different quarterbacks. But Cade McNamara was the clear-cut starter over J.J. McCarthy when he was a freshman until the second half of Georgia, when it was like, you know what? We need the athleticism. We need the escapability from the pocket. We need the throwing on the run, because Cade was just getting swallowed up by that defensive front from Georgia. So if Bryce Underwood could be to the standard or to the level that Cade McNamara was in 2021, I thought that would be a great sign for the offense. And he's not quite there. He's not quite there, but he's not far off either. Again, I'd say he's in the ballpark of that 21 offense, but not quite there, with still 3 big games to go. If he is able to take a couple steps forward during this bye week, then he could reach that benchmark, and this team could be championship level. Now, the defense is not going to be as dominant as 21. That's why I said the 22 defense made more sense to me. So I think that this team is better than the 2019 team that was 9-3, but gave up 56 points at home to Ohio State. And I don't know whether or not this team is good enough to be on the same level as the 2021 team. And remember, that's a team that had a 70% success rate at home against Ohio State and had a running back score 5 touchdowns in that game and won 42-27 over one of the most prolific offenses that Ohio State's put together in recent history. And it's going to take that level of performance to pull off a similar upset. So I think they're right in between those 2 teams, with really a pivotal moment in the season coming up here. I would compare this bye week moment right now to how you felt going into that Washington game. Like, oh man, this is going to be kind of a harbinger of things to come. And I remember how anxious you were, and they played so well against Washington at home that, you know, we kind of forget about the anxiety of that week leading into the Washington game.
Clint, I don't forget, and I feel very relieved that I was wrong.
Yeah, it's a similar feeling now, that it can swing wildly right now based on how well they perform in the next 3 weeks. So that's where they are statistically. It's right in that realm. It's always been maybe 9-3, maybe 10-2. Is that going to be good enough to be an at-large team for the playoff? You know, what will everybody else look like? And now, given the way things are shaking out, I think you got to get to 10-2 to get into the playoff from the Big Ten. Indiana's going to be in. Ohio State's going to be in. If Oregon takes care of business down the stretch, especially against Washington in the last week of the season, I think they are going to get in. So the 4th team potentially from the Big Ten could be USC, who still has a shot at Oregon, and could be Michigan, who's got a shot at Ohio State. So they are right. The team, the program, they are right when they say everything is in front of them. They could be the 21 team and playing for championships. They could be the 19 team and leave us a little bit disappointed and wanting for more. But either way, this season is the first of a 3-year window here with Bryce Underwood under center and a really, really good offensive line that is very young, and 2 really great wide receivers who are freshmen. And I'm telling you, these last 3 weeks, I'll call it now, just like I did with Marsh coming out of the last bye week. Look out for next Jamar Browder. He's going to make a difference over these next 3 weeks compared to what he was before the bye week.
So I think my hope for this team was that they would make the college football playoffs, and a one and done I'm fine with. Okay. As a freshman to get there, okay, to kind of get a taste. I will be disappointed if that doesn't happen, but we got to see how it plays out. If somehow Michigan goes 10-2 and does not make the college football playoffs, I can live with that, right? That would be, I believe that the Michigan brand, and coupled with the expansion of the playoffs, a 2-loss Big Ten team should make it, especially if their name is Michigan. But that's my hope, right? Now I will tell you this, okay? If Michigan finishes out these 3 games the way I believe they can, and that's why this is the third time I've said it. I see the offense clicking in game 4, right? If they can continue to run, continue to get healthy, and this offensive line continues to gel, they could be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. Okay, but they got to take care of business first. And business is Northwestern, business is Maryland, and business is Ohio State. So, Clint, when you say that Bryce's performance this year syncs up with Cade's performance a few years back, nothing against Cade, but I think we can agree that Bryce's upside is higher than him, right? The question I have is, kind of beyond the stats. Was Cade successful because he had better players around him, better offensive line? And I'm looking back, and really, I think a lot of the success that both Cade and JJ had was just how good the Michigan offensive line was. It allowed them to develop. And I think the difference that we had with, even when JJ wasn't the starter, is that he had so much potential. Okay. So my question is, what do you think Bryce is going to need to do or can do in these last 3 regular season games, the 4th quarter of this season, to kind of increase his stature and maybe start to look more like a young J.J. McCarthy than a mid-career Cade McNamara?
It all starts with how comfortable he can be when he is throwing from the pocket. Of course, we're going to judge the quarterback based on what happened. It's a results-oriented business, right? Did you complete the pass? Or is the offense scoring points? That's what matters. But if we could kind of divert our attention from the end of those plays, from the pass and the catch and the run and the scoring, and even before the ball leaves his hands, I'm telling you, it's at the top of his drop. So he catches the snap and his feet move back, whether it's a 1-step, 3-step drop from the shotgun, whatever it is, whatever the planned drop back is, whatever the footwork that is being taught on any given play. Once he does that, he gets to the top of his drop. That is where we'll be able to tell whether he has taken the step forward from freshman Bryce Underwood to junior Cade McNamara in 2021. I mean, he has to be able to stand in there and make tough throws especially when there's no imminent threat to actually being sacked. He's bailed out of some clean pockets recently, and it's about being able to keep his eyes down the field and stand in the pocket. And he does fine when they plan for him to throw on the run. When they move the pocket, when they bootleg him, that's fine. He's missed a couple of reads on the run. Those are all tough things. But to take the next step forward, he's got to have calm confidence at the top of his drop, and we got to be able to see him throw the ball over the middle without bailing out of a clean pocket. And statistically, I'll use one kind of catch-all stat that I like is expected points added, which is like every play approximately what's it worth on the scoreboard on average. And the 2025 offense right now is 0.19 points per play. That 21 offense was 0.23 points per play, a little bit better. Like I said, if we just want to talk about pass plays, 2025 with Bryce Underwood, 0.196, let's call it 0.20. 21 with Cade McNamara, 0.24. So, there's work to do there. There's meat on the bone, and it's going to be up to Bryce Underwood and the coaching staff to put the work in and go do it.
So what does the SP Plus say for Michigan versus Northwestern?
SP Plus expects Michigan to win by 11.4 points. And I think the Vegas spread that I saw most recently was 11.5 points. So it's pretty remarkable how quickly the Vegas spread lines up with the SP Plus spread. But yeah, so the Connolly's model expects Michigan to win by 11.4 points. This would be Northwestern right now is 5-4 overall. They are the 67th overall SP Plus ranked team. That's almost exactly in the middle. I think there's 137 FBS teams. So Northwestern is almost exactly in the middle, but they're imbalanced like they usually are, kind of an Iowa style with a weak offense, 96th overall, and 35th on the defensive side of the ball. So for comparison, Michigan right now is 18th overall, 42nd ranked offense in SP Plus, and the 9th ranked defense. So don't ask about special teams. It's triple digits.
So there are some other things that I think we're tracking here, right? So first, as people across the nation and the world may not be aware, we have unseasonably early snow here in the Michigan, Illinois area. And I wonder, so first, you have a football field jammed into Wrigley Field. You have grass planted over the infield. And I know they do this frequently, but I'm always suspect on that, okay? And then you have a grass field that just got dumped snow on it, and you just wonder how good that field's going to be. So I think that's just something that we'll be checking, right? Something that the Michigan players have already said that they've been practicing on the grass and practicing outside to get used to it. But this is something that as much as people think that we live in the great snowy Midwest, it usually doesn't stick till mid-December, maybe late November. So to have snow on the ground this early is a little bit different. And, again, I'm glad to see that, that Michigan is preparing for it. But again, you do have that. That's going to be an interesting factor. It's going to be a different environment. Again, it's a football field jammed into a baseball stadium. So it's going to be a spectacle, right? And I think that just like Michigan going into Oklahoma was a spectacle for the folks down there, this is going to be a spectacle for the people in the Chicagoland area. Lots of alums will be there. This will be a friendly crowd, but definitely that's something, and it's funny because the Michigan player said, well, it's a football field. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a football field in a baseball stadium. There's going to be some looking around, I think, when they walk in. So you're going to have that factor. And, we can't ignore that it's a huge factor that all of their goals are ahead of them. And let's remember, Penn State still has a lot of talent, and Northwestern knocked them off, okay? Northwestern is not going to back down here, okay? So it's going to be interesting to see how both teams respond. The weather's supposed to be pretty decent. I've seen forecasts in the high 50s, mid 60s, which is positively balmy for November in Chicago. So definitely a lot of things to watch. And, the big thing I'm going to be watching for is, so the Michigan running attack is formidable. okay, how does it do on grass? Okay, grass is different. I wish all football was played on a natural surface, but that's not how it is these days, and it is the exception. So it'll be interesting to see how the team responds to playing on that natural surface, and how many players come back healthier after the bye week. Coach Moore said, this week, it's not just the players who are hurt. Everybody's dinged up at this point in the season. So to have, a bye week to be able to kind of, rest up and heal up, we might see, hopefully we'll see one of Michigan's best performances of the season. And, that's what I'm looking for. So Clint, do you have any predictions on the score?
Yeah, in the preseason, I thought Michigan 33, Northwestern 6. I've revised that down. I think it's going to be a little bit sloppy. To your point about the field conditions, I've got Michigan 21-10. I think Northwestern probably covers the spread if you're interested in such things. But again, Michigan might miss on some downfield shots, but I will be encouraged if we see Bryce Underwood standing in the pocket and throwing confidently, and Chip Lindsey with enough confidence in his quarterback to call some of those plays over the middle or deep down the field. So just calling the plays is the indicator that I want to see. And if they can connect, that's a bonus. But show me that you've got confidence to make the defense defend the whole field. And I think that they can iron the last kinks out over the last 3 weeks.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the UMGoBlue.com podcast. This is Phil Callahan along with
Clint Derringer.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.
Kind of indicated that Jordan Marshall is almost built for November football in the Midwest. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I mean, he's from that state that we all know of, but he was the Ohio State Player of the Year, so he's played in this type of weather, been through it. But it's his mentality, it's his mentality and how he runs. He's a physical runner, and you can see it from the first game he ever played when he played down there in the rain in Tampa, and he just got better with more carries, and how he's built, how he works, how he studies the game is just kind of, he's a back that in November he's going to thrive.
What I've learned about myself is whatever this team needs me to be, I'm going to do it for them. This team means the world to me. This coaching staff means the world to me. This program means the world to me. And it's a commitment that I made a long time ago. And, again, I just love coming here every single day and going to work. And we talk about putting those work jackets on and blue collar. It's real. It's real that we come in here every single day and work, whether you feel good, whether your body hurts, whether you're tired. You walk in these doors and it's a different type of mentality and different type of mindset, because every single guy in this building loves football, loves this game, and loves this team. And again, like I said, whatever this team needs from me, that's what I'm going to do. If that's getting 5 touches a game and blocking the whole game, that's what I'm going to do. Protecting Bryce, protecting whoever's back there, that's what I'm going to do. And when it is my time to get up there and start or do whatever I have to do for the team, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step up to the challenge and take it head on.
Thank you for listening to the UMGoBlue.com podcast. All rights reserved.